go live button. Oh, yeah, I guess I should check the audio. All right, we're live.
Hello, hello, hello.
All right, hitting the go live button. Oh, yeah, I guess I should check the audio. Audio live.
Hello, hello,
Good.
hello.
Yeah, audio's good.
Okay, I am recording.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we have another very special episode. We have the 1973 movie American Graffiti.
Yes. Package delivery.
Yeah.
Good.
And Mongo begging for treats.
Mongo, my friend.
Delivering things for the lab. Hi, Nathan.
How's it going?
Nathan says, how's it going? We're live on the internet, so.
Oh, okay. We'll talk later.
Okay.
I'll give you a call tomorrow, probably.
You can't hear you, so.
Okay.
All right, we'll just start from the beginning.
I'm gonna just stop the recording and delete
Okay.
that real quick. That was that. I mean, that could be weird. It's like, yeah, it's back to our roots. It's just like, hey, come on in.
I literally left the on-air sign out the door. So.
Hold on a second here. Now I'm recording.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
We have another very special episode. We have the 1973 movie American Graffiti. Nathan, do you have a history of American Graffiti?
This is one of those movies I've seen like 15 minutes of all my life.
Yeah.
And then well, this movie caused the it didn't cause. It was kind of a weird time in my life because when I was hanging around with all the car guys and their dads who were actually building the cars you see in this movie,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, you should watch this movie." And it's like, okay, so we watched it one night, and it's like, but then I had a copy of my own version of Hot Rods, which was, of course, the original Road Warrior, the Mad Max. And it's like, this is more what I think of when I think of like modding out cool cars. It's like less chrome, more metal spikes, and because at the end of the day, it's all a race to see who has the fastest car, but the conditions of victory are slightly different or almost the same as we see in the end of this movie. So yeah, this was kind of like an era. Some of the guys that was around like grew up in this era. This was their time, and this was their movie. And it's like, yeah, well, mine's more like Mad Max, which is weird because that's in a totally different country, totally different aesthetic. But it's like, yeah, when I think of fast cars, this is my fast car movie. So this was always kind of the yin to yang of that. And then I later came to appreciate this movie as like, oh yeah, this is the precursor to all those 80s movies about teenagers growing up. And this was the first movie I can recall where it's like there's no soundtrack to this movie. They're just playing all these songs from that era over and over again.
It's what one of my favorite terms. It's full of diegetic music. The music is
diegetic music. I like that. Okay.
It's movies where the music is originating from a source within the film. Like it's coming from a radio, it's coming from a car. It's not being played over top of it as background music. The music is originating from within the film.
Yeah. See, I appreciate this. I didn't like this movie at one level because it's like, well, this is a time and a place that is like vastly removed from me. I feel no common cause here. I never liked hot rod car culture for the 57 Chevy / let's put the largest motor we can in an old Ford Roadster vehicles that have like no ability to handle power unless it's in a straight line. It's like, the suspensions in these are terrible. You can't corner. You have to literally cram the brakes and hit the gas at the same time to make these things go around corners because it's just a wagon with wheels that turn like this in the front. And you've managed to put a 500 horsepower engine that you made yourself into it, which is also adding a lot of fun. But the guys that were masters at doing that were geniuses. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you got to set the shift points in the transmission. It's like, how do you do that? Well, you take transmission apart. It's like, what? You're going to take an automatic transmission apart? I know a guy that can do that. It's like, that's crazy. So if you've ever seen an automatic transmission taken apart, you're like, oh, we're done. This is like taking a watch apart. It's like, it looks cool. It's never going back together. But these guys could do it. I never could, but these guys could.
Well, yeah, nowadays, like, these cars are kind of valuable because they, like, you know, because they're old cars, you can kind of mess with them where they aren't held to the same safety standards that modern cars are.
Mm-mm.
And because if you look at a modern car, like, look in the doors, it's all full of stuff.
Yep.
These old cars, there's nothing in those doors. Those cars are way lighter than modern cars, even though they look way bigger and look like boats on the road.
Well, the old cars, you make them sound solid because you melt lead into the bottom of the door or put weights in it like Mercedes did, and that gives that solid thump.
Yeah.
Nowadays, a lot of like even Stacy said, like our cars, it's like you close the door and it's like a real hollow, tinny sound. And it's like, why is that? And I said, well, because there's like 5 different sensors and an airbag module in there. And, you know, it's like these new cars, you understand, if you get in a wreck, all you're going to see is white because your body's going to be held immobile from airbags literally going off from every quadrant at this point. That's why they tell people don't put seat covers on them and stuff, because it's like, yeah, you're just interfering with the airbag and changing how that works.
Don't make your safety device a Claymore device.
Yeah. Yeah, don't wear chainmail while driving. Or don't, you know, garnish your car in like metal stuff inside.
Yeah, there's always the post that comes up and out, and I don't know if it's an intentional joke or it's like, look how stupid this person is, but it's like someone bedazzled their steering wheel with like gems and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, so
and there's an ER photo where it looks like they got blasted by a shotgun in the face. It's like, yeah. I have seen the power of airbags when you just like, because you're literally taking a module out that's like this big, that's in the steering wheel, and sometimes you have to waste those because there's rules about how they can be once uninstalled, never reinstalled. There's all kinds of, and that's the older stuff. I don't know about the new stuff, but it can throw a 55-gallon drum literally 200 feet in the air if you put it underneath there and just hook the wires up to it. Empty 55-gallon drum,
yeah.
But it is massively impressive. Like, is that thing ever coming down? Like, wow. And then when it starts coming down, it's like, oh shit, that's gonna kill someone. But yeah, those things are. I've seen videos on YouTube where people joke around. Like everyone's sitting on a chair or something, and they'll have one underneath there, and the guys will be filming, and they'll trigger it. The guy sits down, doesn't know what's going on. Is like, that is such a great way to just snap somebody's spine. It's like, I don't know who thought that's a good idea, but I do, because it's like, oh yeah, I know these idiots. This is like, let's put an airbag under Bob's chair and set it off. It's like, well, that could, you know, give him like permanent crippling injury, or be fun, or both. Because especially if you're doing it in a shop where you're working on cars where the floor is concrete, it's like, yeah, let's throw a guy 10 feet in the air and have him land on concrete. Yeah. The old cars, you don't have to worry about like getting your head blown off.
I mean,
I've replaced the steering wheel in a modern car before, and it's like, well, it's life or death here. I hope I read that instructions right.
Well, yeah, the old cars though, like, you'll get in a wreck and they'll still look immaculate, but you'll be dead immediately.
Yeah. What happened? Oh, I ran into him at 15 miles an hour, and it's like, Jesus, Bob, you look like you got put through a cheese grater. It's like, well, yeah, because the steering wheel is just a piece of steel coated with hard plastic, and it's got an inner metal ring to honk the horn. Now that's just solid metal.
Well, yeah, because new cars, like, people will get mad at them because like they get in a wreck and it's like, it's flown to pieces. Like, yes, that's all the energy that didn't go through you.
Yeah. There's a reason you're walking around right now. I mean, they guarantee cars to like, I mean, you'll never get this as an official statement. 50-mile-an-hour walk-away crashes now.
Yeah.
Where it's like you just slammed into something at like 50. I mean, it depends too. It's like, how much G-force are you shedding? All right, because if you're just straight going and you never tap the brakes, it's like, yeah, you're fucked. But if you're already in the process of slowing down and you smack into something at 50, it's like, oh yeah, it's people just getting out of the car like, whoa, what happened? I mean, they might have like, soft tissue injuries and stuff later. But oh yeah, it used to be like fender benders and stuff. It's like, oh, you're losing teeth. It's terrifying what cars used to be.
Yeah, in this movie, like nobody has a seatbelt.
No, it's not going to save you really. The cars themselves are so dangerous.
Well, I mean, and even then, the only seatbelt he had was a lap belt. It was just like making you just like you're going to like collapse your head like into your legs, like just making you do that.
What does this do? This crushes my diaphragm. Well, I don't have air in my body when so I can't scream as much.
We're gonna make your head the end of a fulcrum.
Yeah. Yeah, you know how the tip of a whip breaks the sound barrier? That's what the cracking of a whip is. That's what your head's going to become with a seatbelt.
Or lap belt.
Or lap belt, yeah.
Yeah, the standard Volvo seatbelt. I don't even know if that has a 3-point seatbelt or what is
3-point, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There's 3-point, 5-point, 6-point. Those are like full-on racing harnesses.
Yeah.
I know people that have put those in their cars. But those are usually the cars where it's mostly metal inside. So
I've seen there's a YouTube channel I watch, Donut Media, which I'm not sure if they're the best ones. They're just one of the largest ones, and I like some of the personalities on there. And there's all the time where they're building cars, and it's time. It's like, well, it's time to put the roll hoop in, and they put that in, and that's what your 8-point harness hooks up to. And then you get the racing seats, and it's like, do you need that? And you understand, it's like, no, when you're taking a corner really fast, you want to be snug in that seat. You don't want to be sliding around and stuff.
Yeah, just trying to grab a hold of the wheel. No, I call those the cars from Death Proof. Those are Death Proof cars.
But yeah,
that's the driver.
But that's why these cars in these movies are just drag cars, because they just have a bench seat in there. It's like you're gonna be sliding all over the place if you have to take a turn. It's like, it's all straight line speed.
And literally, the suspension in some of those cars is like, oh yeah, that was based on a wagon.
Yeah,
like it's just like 2 points. Kind of the weight of the frame is holding the wheels on. Maybe it's bolted in. Later on, they were bolted. But the steering is like not. It's not. It's like not proportional. It's like, oh yeah, most of your gears here because you're driving on the left-hand side. So you got this much bar on this side and then this much on that side, and the gear's not really calibrated to compensate for that. So turning right is going to be a little more challenging. Turning left's a dream because all your force is there, but it's not proportional. So that's one of the things they did with cars nowadays. I mean, there's all kinds of weird shit about steering. You can learn like torque thrust, which is mainly a front wheel drive phenomenon, where it was hard to steer the wheel the faster you drove the car because all the power was going through the same wheels you were steering with. Whereas rear wheel drive, all the power's from the back and the steering's in the front, but you still get where it's like, oh, it just wants to force the wheels straight. And you had to come up with different mechanical ways to override that. And mainly in race cars, not in car, because the cars these people are driving were just, passenger vehicles that were just so modified that you couldn't tell what they were anymore.
Yeah, because when I first saw this movie, this is the first time I think I actually watched it all the way straight through. It's like I thought this was just like a 50s greasers movie, which what it is it's a 60s movie, and like these are the decade-old car that they could afford, and they just fixed up. And then the reality of it is they got guys who are like fixing up classic cars, and they borrowed it for this movie. So like none of these people, except for maybe John, would have the vehicle they have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess those guys are real asses to deal with because they don't want the cars jumped on, flipped over. They don't want people drinking and eating inside them and stuff. And they were just, because some of those cars, I mean, now those are like cost more than my house if you can find any examples of these left. But yeah, that's. Yeah,
because we saw the parking lot in the airport movie, and it's like all those cars look like garbage.
Yeah, those literally are just landfills waiting.
Here, everything's pretty nice and shiny and modified. So of course, if you don't know, the director is George Lucas.
Yeah.
This is him coming off of THX 1138, which came out in 1971. I'm not sure how much of a bomb that was, but they were disappointed in and how well it did. It's now kind of a
It
cult
made like
classic.
$2.5 million.
Okay.
But it was I don't know. I always see that as kind of a proof out. Is like, can you make a movie? It's like, yes, you can. Can you make like a wholly self-contained science fiction movie on a shoestring budget? Yeah, you can. You can do that.
Well, because that's why he turned around and did this, because this is something more commercially viable. He actually got less movie money to make this movie than THX 1138.
Yep.
There's a ton of trivia on it. I don't know how much to believe, because it seems like there's so much trivia about this movie that is associated with like all of modern filmmaking, where it's like everything came from here. Where it's like, well, I'm not sure this is like. I'm pretty sure there's probably more coming of age tales that existed before this, but this is kind of a tentpole one, I guess. So yeah, made some more, and I also apparently like he couldn't afford to pay the crew, so they agreed to have their name in the credits as payment, which I guess was new, and now everybody does credits like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know whether to believe or not, but
Well, I know like the profit that this movie made was like Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah, they spent like 600,000 to make it, and it made like $150 million at the box office, which was at that time was extraordinarily huge.
Yeah, because that's just like the American market essentially
Yeah.
paid into that.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely struck a nerve. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite get up to. I mean I'm not sure if that's adjusted. I think that's like $70s.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm not sure what it adjusts to, but I mean, yeah, Blair Witch is crazy because it's like a $30,000 budget and it's like a $300 million return. But that's like production budget, because obviously they spent way more money to advertise that movie, which is really what makes the magic happen for that movie.
Yeah, because they created like the fake internet stuff. One of the first movies to do that.
Yeah.
And, which I don't think you can do nowadays, because that's like, hey, it's fraudulent information. But back then it was fun. It was before everyone before they realized it's like, oh, dumbasses will just like, I'm just flushing my whole future down the toilet over stuff I read on the internet. It's like, no one would do that. It's like, oh yeah.
And the other one, I think like the most modern one that's like I think is the first Paranormal Activity, which I think was like literally some dude in his house and like 40 grand and some cameras, and they just made it, just created an atmosphere that, and it made like hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. So.
Yeah, that one was cool because it's like, oh, it's a cheap production. Well, it's like, yeah, it's supposed to be, because it's a guy using like just consumer grade stuff to record this stuff, because that's what it's like. Oh, so we immediately get
the logic of the movie makes the logic of the production work. Like, I'm a guy, these are the cameras I can afford. So the character in the movie, he's a guy, these are the cameras he can afford.
Yeah, I like how this movie was born out of like THX 1138 and Warner Brothers not wanting to do Lucas's version of Apocalypse Now. Which like, oh, I'd love to see that actually. What was that going to be? But yeah, it's like those are two things you wouldn't think would lead to American Graffiti. But when you find out, it's like Francis Ford Coppola was basically like, hey, do something normal. Do something that's not all weird, like dark science fiction or whatever, dark war movies. And meanwhile, he's making that movie. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it took Francis Ford Coppola coming off the success of Godfather to kind of because he put his name on this movie. I'm not sure what financially what he contributed, but his name kind of made Universal kind of pony up, I guess. So
yeah, it was basically his name made Universal like to agree to distribute it, because Francis Ford Coppola said, I'll just buy it from you and distribute it myself, which would have been a massive windfall if he'd been able to do that. That they pulled out at the last minute, because Wolfman Jack got points on this movie to be in it. And according to his son, like, oh, that kept him the rest of his life. Like the points he got off the 5 minutes he was in this movie, because he was a big get back then. And it's like, we can't pay you anything, but we can give you like 5% of the back end or whatever it was. And he's like, okay, man, sounds cool. And it's like, and the back end on it was massive. It was like buying Apple stock in the 80s or something. It's like, oh yeah, this is a huge amount of money.
I forgot. It came out August 11th, 1973, so summer movie. Drive-in movie, probably.
Oh, definitely.
Cinematographer is Jean d'Aquin and Ron Eversledge, who basically they did a movie before this and this movie, and then nothing afterwards. Except one of the guy was like part of the technical crew on Leonard Part 6. So,
Okay, good.
so these guys pretty much disappeared from existence or found better jobs in a more anonymous like field or
It
something.
seems like they went to teaching.
Okay.
It seems like because one of them has like credits at like USC Film or so it seems like they went and did stuff like that, which is like probably more steady, not as lucrative.
Yeah.
Because I know the reason there were so many cinematographers was part of the. There was actually more than that, but those are the two guys that slapped the credits on it. This was all shot at night.
Yeah.
Which was like some of these guys didn't have the experience of like, oh, how do you do this and light this and make this work, and they weren't getting initial stuff, and also they were shooting like 10 pages a day, which is insane. Like you don't shoot a film that fast normally.
Yeah.
So you had to do it at night, and you had to do it at night at the time when we've talked about like film cameras. It's like, no, it requires you got to be practically set people's clothes on fire lighting these things to shoot at night. So
yeah. Well, I forget, they used some, I'm not sure if they shot this on 35 or if they shot on 16 and just blew it up to 35 later. I think that's what they did, because I think he said like, yeah, we're gonna go for more of a documentary feel. But I can't remember what they did, but they did something that made the whole process way cheaper than it would be otherwise. And I'm not sure
it had something to do with I think because one of the first cinematographer I think was a documentary filmmaker, and the second guy had done both, but I think the second guy like figured out like, oh no, you need to use this lens to shoot at night, and then you do stuff to the film and it's going to look cool.
Yeah.
But it's still going to have that kind of grainy natural look that you want. So it's just kind of a matter of figuring that out, which would normally have not been a problem, but because of the accelerated shoot on this movie, it was like it's a huge problem because we can't work anything out as we go.
Yeah.
And this is where George Lucas has apparently established his directing style of like, yeah, just keep shooting, and the actors are like, should we keep going? It's like, yeah, do what you're doing. It's like, wait, you're the director. Can you give me some like direction here? No, just this, yeah,
faster, more intensity.
Yeah.
I forget what the line he uses, but that's basically his only cue for directing. Is just like faster, more intensity.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's a lot of actors, like everyone's like, he's a nice guy, but holy fuck, I'm getting no instructions. I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do, which a lot of actors find liberating, because he's like, yeah, that's fine, It's like no problem.
Well, I mean, he really stopped directing after the first Star Wars movie. He just became a producer in a studio, like, or not really a studio head, a production head at that point.
Yeah, he just wanted to like tweak the stories and come up with grandiose scenes.
Yeah.
The George Lucas vision is amazing. It's the nuts and bolts of is not that interesting.
Yeah.
That's like James Cameron. Now, James Cameron's going to tell you how to act.
Yeah.
And he'll punch you if you don't do it right. You're going to know exactly what he wants you to do. George Lucas, more hands off.
Yeah. We all we all know what we want here. We'll just yeah.
We're all adults here. I'm not here to be your dad. You figure this out.
My profession isn't an actor. You're the actor.
Yeah. I'm not a surrogate father.
But yeah, I guess other trivia I heard is that like George Lucas missed his 10th year reunion while shooting this movie, because like this is basically based on his time in high school. So
yeah,
I mean vaguely. Because it's written by George Lucas, and it's written by the writing team, the husband and wife writing team of Gloria Katz and Willard Hayek.
Okay.
Which they worked together again. They wrote Temple of Doom. They would write Howard the Duck, which then Willard directed, and that kind of seemed to be not really the end of their career. They got into like TV after that. So.
Yeah, no one starved to death.
The cast is no, that's not the right thing. Give me the top cast list. Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, and Paul Le Mat.
Yep.
And other people you'll know. We'll get to them. So
Yeah, this has like a main credit, and then like it's like a notable subsection of like, yeah, there's everyone else. And the other star of the movie, the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which you know all these songs, whether you know them or not. You've heard all these songs in the background at some
Yeah.
point. Not so much anymore. I don't think like
No.
like my son probably wouldn't recognize a lot of these. But of course, he's into a lot of 70s prog rock too. So
Yeah.
because my son's kind of like, it's not as weird as me. It's like, oh, it's the only teenager that's into Jethro Tull. But yeah, he is into a lot of like, but he also likes a lot of that modern stuff where it sounds like, I don't know, like a faster version of, what's the guy's name? Eminem, but there's like a rock subbeat to it. It's like, what do you think of this song, Dad? It's like, I think I'm becoming old, is what I think, because I don't really like this. But
I do like the one character thinking like it's the early 70s. He's like, man, rock music's going to pieces, and it's like,
yeah, I
no.
did like that. This is over, man. Music is dead. It's like, well, hang on, because this is set in like what, 62?
62, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, rock music's gone. Ready for the next thing. It's like, okay. I wouldn't put a lot of money on that bet, but
so you have Act 1. We get a Lucas and Coppola title card with like, you hear like a radio being dialed in. It opens up on Mel's Drive-In, which they call it what, Burger Town, but it clearly says Mel's Drive-In.
yeah. It's one of those things. It's like, we're just going to call it this because we don't really have the budget to like make a sign.
Yeah.
We're just filming at some business, but it's like, it smells.
We get American Graffiti and like neon titles. Rock Around the Clock plays. Then we get them. The rest of the credits are also neon, so that's kind of neat, I guess. And then some dude in a scooter pulls up and bangs it into a wall, which this was a total accident, but actually works for his character. So because he's like a spaz.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things where they were talking. The actor was talking about, and it's like, yeah, that's George Lucas. Because he was like, they were like, do something funny with it, like kill the engine or whatever. So he just like double clutched it, like goosed the clutch, and he just lost control and smashed into a vending machine. Wasn't supposed to happen. And at first he gets off of it and stops because he's like, he thinks they're gonna call scene. No, just keep going. Oh, okay. Which actually worked out, because there's a lot of things in this movie where you can tell if you pay attention after you hear that, where the actors are sort of looking around and they just like, oh yeah, let's just keep doing this, because it's like we're kind of looking into the distance. Yeah. There's a lot of that in this movie where people are sort of looking like, okay, yeah, we'll just keep going. The show must go on.
Got to stay in character, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's stay in character, and sometimes you're looking for a genuine reaction. You know, like when on Barbarella when the guy thought she was being killed. It's like, nah, it's okay. Then a different guy pulls up in some weird blue car, or is this just a VW? I'm not sure what this is. This is Dreyfuss's car.
I think it's I have the cars of this movie pulled up. I think his is some weird Italian or French. I think his is like a Citroen, I thought.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was. I saw that in the list. Let me see. Because this movie's so hard because it'll say like Ford Special, Mercury, because they're so heavily modified. You can't really. Yeah, because this has the weird like oval doors, which I always associated with.
Okay.
Citroen. I could be wrong on that.
I mean, his car is like maybe one of the least important because they just abandon it here for the rest of the movie. So. Yeah,
he's basically, it's just the cars in this movie establish who the characters are.
Yeah.
That's a Citroen, 1967 2CVAZA. So it's not even the Citroen. I don't think those have the cool suspension or anything. It's just kind of like their take on a Volkswagen.
Oh, okay.
Which is what I thought of it as.
And then we have the gang show up together. It's Steve, played by Ron Howard. What's he named as Ronnie Howard in the credits or something like that? Yeah. We got Kurt, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and Terry, played by Charles Martin Smith, who's just kind of like a dork in every movie he's in, but you gotta show him in glasses. And I only remember in this, and like he's kind of like the dorky accountant in The Untouchables.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, this is Ron Howard. Like, I'm going to make a TV show called Happy Days from this.
Actually, like that's the weird thing because people think, like, I guess the trivia is people think this is what inspired Happy Days, but Happy Days was already a pilot, and like, because they had like come up with these things where they for TV where they just like make a bunch of pilots and show them in a block of like something on television, like see what people respond to it, and then make a show out of it. So
Uh-huh.
in the midst of like turning that show into Happy Days from its pilot, he does this movie in between.
Yeah.
And it was the greaser character from this movie that then they added Fonzie into Happy Days because they're like,
Right.
we'll just transfer stuff over because this is a big hit. We'll just transfer stuff over because it's essentially kind of the, or actually, is Happy Days supposed to be in the 50s? I can't remember.
Happy Days, I think, is in the 50s.
Okay.
Because it ran from like 74 to like 1981 or something.
But there's going to be
That's the one where they talk about, that's where jumping the shark term comes
Yeah.
from. Because Happy Days just ran out of stuff to do.
yeah, because at one point Fonzie like jumps a car and it's a whole thing, and then they decided like we need to one up that, and they decided, well, I'm gonna jump a shark. So that's where that phrase comes from. But yeah, there's a lot of connection between this and Happy Days, and all of it is like unintentional or
And Laverne and Shirley, which was a spinoff of Happy Days.
yeah, oh yeah, but yeah, Happy Days had like 9 spin-offs, so it's like
Yeah.
crazy. So if you think all the metaverse superhero stuff is crazy now, like they did the exact same shit in the decades
Oh,
you thought
yeah.
were better at. So.
Yeah, where there's money, there's people like, oh, we're going to make this and do a thing and do a thing and a thing.
What was the show of the Archie Bunker?
Oh, All in the Family?
Yeah, there's like 9 spin-offs of All in the Family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, there is.
Because there's what was there? Because there's the one where like Archie Bunker has a bar,
Yeah, it's Archie Bunker's Place.
and then there's the Jeffersons, and then there was Good Times, and there was a bunch of other ones. I think Maude was a spin-off of that too.
I think so, yeah.
The one with B. Arthur.
Yeah.
I think it was Maude. I can't remember, or some other name, like it was a one-name character.
Yeah, I
Show.
know what you're talking about.
So yeah, Kurt gets $2,000 for some like scholarship from the Moose Lodge because this is on the eve of both Kurt and Steve going off to college. Which are they going to the same college, or are they just both going off to college in general?
I think I just got it as like they're going to college like pejoratively, not maybe the same one.
Okay.
But they're basically like, yeah, the high school times are over. And actually, mostly post high school for the one guy.
Yeah. Yeah, John. Yeah, he's already. Yeah, because it's a group of friends, but it seems like John's older than them, so maybe he just made friends with him while he was a couple grades older than them. I'm not sure how old he's supposed to be, but it is
Well,
kind of.
everyone in this movie is like they all look like 30-year-old teenagers.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of them. Because Richard Dreyfuss always looks like someone's dad, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but this is the youngest I've ever seen him. So
yeah, this is very young Richard Dreyfuss.
Well, of course, Ron Howard always looks super young, but I guess if you came off of, what's the Matlock Sheriff show?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good one. Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, is it just called Andy Griffith? Yeah, so remember him as a kid in that. So
Yeah,
because I know that show because it was in reruns constantly, as was Happy Days, and when I was a kid. So you always saw those.
watched
shows.
a lot of Happy Days.
Yeah, so I saw Alfred Hitchcock, all the black and white shows. I saw Andy Griffith Show, Alfred Hitchcock, Twilight Zone, other black and white shows, Perry Mason, stuff like that.
Yep.
Like that was always on the Nick at Night and
The
stuff.
Honeymooners.
Yeah, and then you see a lot of the Three Stooges,
Yeah.
too. So
Oh yeah.
that was kind of like the first run of reruns when that became available. It's like we gotta fill these channels with content, and we don't have enough money to make it. But
Yeah, I mean, that was just like Nick at Night was insane. Like
Yeah.
that became its own thing. It's like you could literally watch TV from 40 years ago. And people steamed into it like it became a thing. They were selling advertising doing it.
Yeah, I think Nick and I don't know where Nick at Night is now. It might even be like a different thing now. But I remember there was like a show with what's her name from one of the Golden Girls. It was called like Hot in Cleveland. It was like really Nick at Night getting big enough that it can make its own television, but yeah, somehow is able to do it.
Oh, those are always people will try that.
So.
This will either be the best thing ever or the worst.
Yeah, it was like Betty White and Courtney Cox in a comedy on Nick at Night. But yeah, Kurt's getting cold feet about going to college and going out of town, which I guess is sort of. Well, I remember, so I've seen the sequel to this, and I remember there's a whole thing about like running to Canada to get away from the draft. But that's never a thing in this movie. At least nobody brings it up as being a concern.
Yeah, I don't think the Vietnam War hadn't really. I think they were still in the advisors phase at that point.
Yeah, because I tried to look it up. Like, when did our American involvement? So yeah, there was like training from us from like the 50s, but like the actual like when we send troops in, I can't remember where that starts. But
I think that was like 65, 67s.
Well, no, it's still no, because Kennedy puts him in there.
Yeah.
So that's before he dies, which that's 63.
So I'm trying to think of like when were the big offensives going on. So I think like the darkest years of the Vietnam were like the Johnson era.
Yeah.
That's when they were like they had like what was that called? The Tet Offensive and all that. Didn't that happen under Johnson? Where it's like we can't win this unless we use nuclear weapons at this point, and it's like, huh. Then Nixon's like, I'll do that. It's like, oh, sit down, stop it.
But I remember like that was the thing about one of the weird effects of the Vietnam War is like suddenly people were really interested in going to college because you couldn't be drafted if you were going to college. As far as I know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we could ask Dad about that because he graduated college at the wrong time. Like, oh, you're getting drafted now. It's like, what?
Well, he has a weird thing where he like enlisted and got drafted at the same time. It's like,
yeah, I know. I didn't really understand. I think there was like a reasons for that back then. That was that old system. Because that's like super class warfare if you really think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you're going to college, you don't have to go fight in our weird foreign wars. It's like, that doesn't really seem fair. But then again, college back then was mostly paid for.
Yeah.
The GI Bill and stuff. Now it's like that would absolutely be like, well, if you're not in college, you got to go fight in a war. It's like, well, that's just class warfare.
Well, back then you could probably get probably a part-time job and pay for college while you're working there.
Yeah, I think it cost like $70 a year to go to college back then or something. Someone had a bill from Harvard from like the 1890s. It was like $120 a semester or something crazy like that. It's like, huh, okay. Which was probably like a lot of money back then.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you could buy 2 horses with that. It's like, oh, okay.
We cut to him. It's nighttime. 16 Candles plays. They're at the drive-in. The drive-in's filled with cars. Kurt's talking to John. John's like the greaser. John Milner.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about the lack of available women or pretty women.
Yeah.
And here they're also just basically talking about the town is dying. Which this isn't Modesto, California, but this whole thing is based on George Lucas's growing up in Modesto, California. Which it's not the biggest town in California, but it's about the size of Cedar Rapids. It has 200,000 people now. But it's mostly agriculture, I guess that relates to. But they have 2 Walmarts, so it's a big it's a big city.
Yeah, that's like reaching for the stars there.
But it's only the 19th biggest city in California. It's like almost directly south of Sacramento, and it's almost directly east of San Francisco. So that's where it sits in kind of northern California. So yeah, the town doesn't really die, but everybody seems to be like, we got to get out of here, man.
Yeah. Yeah, when you have like Los Angeles, like 100 miles to your south, it's easy to be like, yeah, I don't think Modesto's going anywhere.
They can hear a car take off in the background. Kurt thinks he should like chase him down and race him, but John says like, oh, he'll find me if he needs to. So, which I'm assuming that's Bob, but we don't know. It's just the sound in the background. So, But yeah, John's like he's older. We don't know how much older, but like this is his thing. This is like the weirdest friend group that doesn't seem like they should be friends at all. I don't think that's really. It's only like coalesced at the end that like when they all like are at the airport seeing them off, it's like, oh yeah, this is a friend group. But like here, like they know each other. They all split off and have their own adventures and then come back together.
Yeah, that was. I remember when I graduated from high school, it was like everyone else went to college, and I just kind of got a new group of friends in town.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like my experience of like, well, and I've never seen any of those people since almost. So it's like, oh, okay, that's weird. But my like the group of friends I had after high school, it's like, oh, I still talk to those guys.
Yeah. But also like, I mean, it's also a very different character because you can directly compare this to Matthew McConaughey's character in Dazed and Confused, which is basically just the same movie, just 10 years later.
Yeah.
In the timeline, that's about the 70s. And, he's just the old guy that doesn't leave. And it's like, he's where he says like, I keep getting older, but they stay the same age. And it's like, oh, you're just a creep, aren't you? Which luckily,
he's still like interested in 16-year-old girls. He's like 25. I was like, you're a psycho, actually. But you look cool and you say funny things.
But here it's a movie about the 60s. At least he's not a creep. He's not interested in just to keep dating high school girls. So at least it doesn't turn out that way. Because a lot of this movie, you feel like, oh, this isn't going to age well, but actually it's fine.
It's pretty innocent. Yeah. It's like there's nothing like terrifying in this movie.
Because this is it's a coming of age tale, and it's kind of like this weird. It's like weird pranks. But there's like very little sex going on, and there isn't like sex comedies stuff going on, which is what like a movie like this would turn into. Like, this just becomes Porky's and American Pie, or here it's more.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good, like innocent fun.
Then we cut to Lori, played by Cindy Williams, who she was Shirley in Laverne and Shirley, which that was a spinoff of Happy Days. So
yep.
She just died this year.
That's right, she did, didn't she?
So her and Steve are talking about their relationship, or like Steve's like proposing like, yeah, we should date other people while we're away, and then when we come back together, we'll see if it still sparks. But I never had to deal with this crap, but I know this goes on. It's always hilarious where it's like, oh, we're going to different colleges. Like, do we break up? And it's like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely you do, because either way you're going to be screwing around with other people. So might as well just make it official. Then we have Terry's like in the background trying to pick up a waitress, which is just, it's just the saddest character, but at least he kind of has a happy ending. Yeah.
Actually, I guess nobody really has a happy ending, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
So Kurt's going to let Terry take care of his car while he's gone at college. So now Terry just has this car for the rest of this movie, which is interesting. And then Steve just hops into Laurie's car, and also Kurt does too. Are they brother and sister, Kurt and Laurie?
I think so.
He comes up and he calls her sis at one point, so I didn't know if that meant they were brother and sister, but like it seemed like it's like, why does she have the good car? But I guess he's going to college, whatever.
Yeah.
I think the group are talking about going to the freshman hop, which I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's a freshman dance, but then the whole high school's there, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I did look that up. It's sometimes it was sponsored by like a local radio station.
Oh yeah.
And it was like so they would play like just certain music for whatever they were promoting, but then it happened at a high school, and it would also be like or a public place, and it would be like an all-night dance type thing.
So have that being in
this is the most weirdest example of anthropological explanation I've ever seen. This is on Wikipedia. An informal sponsored dance event for teenagers in the mid-20th century in North America. It's like, okay, that's a weird way to put that, but In South Africa, it's known as a sake.
I've heard of a sock hop before.
It's basically the same thing.
Okay. I know the word. I don't know. Again, I don't know what that means.
It's just capitalism.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
music, and it's like, oh, we want to say this is the cool music, kids, buy it.
Well, because John's like offended by this. Is like, stop hanging around high school kids.
Yeah. He's not wrong, actually. It's kind of like, yeah.
Because also presumably like they all already graduated the semester before, which I'm not sure about that. Like, did they graduate early, or is it like, are they in the summer right now? I don't know.
I think this is supposed to be in the summer.
Okay, and so
because this is the end of summer vacation, as I remember it.
Okay, so then so this is like a dance for incoming freshmen or something like that.
Yes.
I presume. Okay.
Yeah, it's something that would actually be really grody for 18-year-old guys to go to nowadays, because it's like, oh, you're just a psycho. But then you listen to some of these songs, and it's like Adam Carolla always ruined the old songs for me, and because he of course sing the lyrics in his Adam Carolla, like she's only 16 and we know what's gonna happen, and it's like, this is just like pedophilia. This is a song. And he's not wrong.
Yeah. There was there was an urge to get people together back then so they could get married and have kids, whether they loved each other or not. And so I guess it's better than arranged marriages, but still weird and stupid.
Yeah, it's kind of a culture that like just doesn't exist anymore.
So I have that being in Act 1, because I have like the whole story is basically like this is like two of theirs like last night in town before they go to college, and so yeah, they're figuring out what they're gonna do. So we have Act 2, downtown, busy streets are filled with classic cars, and this is the strip. This is what people do.
Yep.
People congregate with their cars and drive along the strip with no direction or ultimate destination in mind, and yell at each other across the way to talk each other while driving.
I did a lot of this growing up.
I've never done this. This seems wholly stupid to me.
Oh, I did stuff like, well, it was basically an entree into other activities, like for me, drinking. But yeah, it was always something that I did.
I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I was like, my 20s, but I still wouldn't like yell at people from a car or anything like that.
No, I was mainly cruising for like booze. I mean, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, here they call it cruising, where basically you're just driving around looking for stuff to do, which that's a way different term nowadays.
Yeah, now cruising, it's like, oh, we're going out cruising. It's like, oh yeah, a bunch of guys. Okay, makes sense. Like to do that. It's like, what? Cruising for chicks. It's like, no, nobody's doing that anymore, man. That's dating apps now.
Yeah, that costs money.
Yeah.
Yeah, John is driving and he's like yell talking at some guys that he's like, "Hey, what happened to your car?" And they're like, "Yeah, your mother." It's like, are any of these just supposed to be insults? I'm not sure, but they're like, "Yeah, there's a guy looking for it." He's like, "All right." Terry gets insulted in his car where he thinks it's cool, I got a car, and then he gets mooned too, so you just feel bad for this guy. It's like, it feels weird that like his friend group seems to be popular people, but then nobody respects him regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve, Laurie, and Kurt are driving around and listen to Wolfman Jack, who like pops in, like they have like Wolfman Jack doing like a prank phone call, which I'm guessing is kind of like early Dirty Dozen, or not Dirty Dozen, Jerky Boys kind of thing going on here.
Yeah.
Before that was a thing. I guess radio stations were always doing. Nathan, do you want to stop in now to explain the whole mythos of who is and what Wolfman Jack does?
Well, Wolfman Jack was essentially your kind of prototype for just like your super cool DJ guy.
Yeah.
Who just plays, music. And of course, Wolfman Jack is known to have the raspy, gravelly voice that, hey guys, I'm talking like, it's like, it's become a standard thing.
Yeah.
His name was Robert Smith, and he was born in Brooklyn in the 30s, like late 30s. And, and I forget. He did a lot of different things. The Ku Klux Klan like burnt a cross in his front yard because he was playing music by black musicians on the radio. Because I guess that's like objectionable back then. And I know he did a lot of like broadcasting from Mexico.
Yeah.
Because you could do like quadruple the power limits that you could in America. So you could cover basically North America.
Yeah.
From Mexican radio stations.
And he didn't have to pay any like FCC fees or anything like that.
Yeah, and there wasn't really like a lot of rules on what he could do either.
Yeah, this is what you would call pirate radio.
Yeah. But he was very well known, and there was also weird like mythologies around him, like, oh, you know, he never leaves his house, or you know, and it's like, and his radio transmitter is so powerful it kills birds, and you know, there was weird conspiracies, and this is what happened before the internet, is you just made up stories about public figures,
yeah,
because no one could verify it, which we thought would like, oh, that era of storytelling is dying. It's like, no, it's actually even worse now. Now you just set up a fake website that has fake information. It's like, see, I found it on my phone, which isn't really a phone anymore. It's just a supercomputer that you can talk to people on that carry in your pocket. But yeah, that's and then I think once Mexico like nationalized their radios, they kicked all the American broadcasters out. And so he came back to the U.S., but he was already like a known property then, and got repackaged as just this crazy DJ guy who played all the music. And
would he have been syndicated by then or something?
Yes.
Like that? Okay.
Yes. He's still syndicated to this day.
Oh,
he died in the mid '90s. They just replay his shows.
Yeah, I know they've been doing that. They did that with Casey Kasem, where you can still find just old shows being played on the radio.
Art Bell, you can still do those.
Art Bell, they're still doing that.
I actually have a few YouTube channels. It's like, I'm doing a you know, in the high desert tonight. Old Art Bell shows. And sometimes they left the commercials in, sometimes they took them out, but the stuff they were selling back then was like so crazy. Stuff in the 90s is like, this cures cancer. It's like, you couldn't say that now. I don't think they were saying cures cancer, but it was some of the products that were advertised on.
Not antibodies. It gets rid of the, what do they call it now? It's complete garbage.
Probiotics? No,
it's basically, it sounds like poison, but it isn't, and it's like not a real thing, but they make it sound like it is.
Yeah, because it's like antioxidants or something.
There's that too, but it's like, you know, it cleanses your body of something or whatever. It's like negatives. Get rid of all your negatives, but it's all garbage.
There's no way around. There's no way to wellness without paying a lot of money. There's no like, oh, we found this berry, you can live forever and have eternal erections. It's like, yeah, it doesn't exist. Sorry. Got to use chemicals and with harsh side effects. Yeah, Wolfman Jack is something. It's still like a cultural vibe. If you hear that voice, you know who that guy is.
There's like a pretty lady that pulls up in the next to them. She's in a T-Bird. She's got blonde hair. It looks like she mouths "I love you" to Kurt, and then she drives off. And then Steve wants, because I think. Is Steve driving or is Lori driving? I think Steve's driving. He wants him to chase her down, but they're like, no, she's already gone.
It's the blonde and the white Thunderbird.
Yeah. Then we cut to
the ghost that's chased throughout the whole movie.
Then we have John is on the prowl looking for the racer. John's trying to pick up an older high school girl, and then they just like. And then he's like, hey, whatever girl you like, want to take my little sister? Yeah, fine. Then, like, basically, like a 14-year-old girl hops in the car, and then he's like, oh, no, this is dangerous. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you think? I'm ugly? It's like, no, you're too young.
Yeah, finally, somebody like snaps into reality. Like, yeah, you're jailbait, sister.
But he's like trying to find like her sister in the car the whole time to give her back, but then they never find her, and so she's just along for the adventure. This is Carol, so.
Just annoyed the whole time and vaguely like, no one's taking me seriously as a young woman. Like, no, you're lucky you don't want him to.
Then we see Terry tries to drag race someone and ends up just like rear-ending someone, and then he does a hit and run and just leaves.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like, oh, he just did thousands of dollars, well, maybe hundreds back then, dollars worth of damage to a car. Takes off.
And then Terry like ends up like he runs away and ends up in front of a used car salesman who tries to like sell him something, and then he just gets weirded out by it and just runs off. I mean, with the car, but it was a weird thing, yeah, because you see it's like nighttime. You see the salesman is like sitting in this giant chair, and he just hops off. It's like, a victim or something. It's like, I have no idea what the scene does for any part of this movie other than it's weird.
Just establishes the culture they're living in at the time, I guess. I don't know what the deeper meaning in this is. That's the thing with this movie. It's like, you can say there's depth or you can just enjoy it. You know, it's virtually going to be the same experience. It's kind of weird that way.
Then we cut to the freshman hop, and there's a live band, and there's dancing in the gymnasium, which I would say, like, oh, this started everything. Like, Back to the Future becomes from this. But then I remember, like, the crazy dance scene from, what's the Christmas movie? It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like, the pool opens up and all that.
Somebody was playing like Dragula over that once, and it actually worked, like the White Zombie song. It was like, oh, that's actually, I could see these people jamming to this.
Then we cut to the girls' bathroom where like Laurie's getting like advice on her relationship, and then we cut to the boys' bathroom and Steve's just talking about his relationship while somebody throws a cherry bomb and blows up a toilet.
Yeah.
Just pranks going on. This is a constant thing. It's like if anything gets too boring for too long, just have somebody have a prank happen. So.
You just light something on fire or rip the axle out of under a police car. It's all fun.
Then they walk outside and Laurie and Steve argue about dancing. Laurie dares Steve to punch her, so that's awkward. Then Laurie just ends up dancing with Eddie, which is the guy that Steve was talking to in the bathroom. And it's like it's like this other couple that they're talking with, but they kind of just disappear from the movie after this. Kurt's going around touring the high school halls. He's like lamenting about leaving high school. So it's like, he's like, this is a good time. Like, I guess, like wish it would only last longer. I mean, there's no evidence to it was a good time. It's just, he seems weirded out by it. Also, yeah, I guess the most of the thing with his character is like, he just doesn't know what he wants to do with the rest of his life. So.
Well, see, what's different about this, and like, because this movie for me would be like what The Breakfast Club, like that's really the movie that like, and that predates me because that's like 80s high school kids. I was more of a 90s, but it's close enough. Whereas what's cool about this movie is these people, it's implied that it's a good time, but they're not really like reflecting on it using dialogue that teenagers never would use. They're just always kind of like in the moment.
Yeah.
And almost like, I know there should be meaning here, but I'm not like everyone seems to have that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is supposed to be meaningful, but I'm not really getting a lot of meaning out of this.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the movie, it's kind of like only upon reflection is this meaningful.
Yeah.
Unlike The Breakfast Club, where they just analyze everything and everyone like talks like adults, but they're teenagers, which is sort of weird. And also what, that's what teenagers were like in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I always recall like how Ryan Johnson talks about the movie Brick. I think Ryan Johnson directed that. Is like, that's like this like kind of like dark modern noir high school movie about like drug dealing. And it's done very seriously. And he says like, the reason he did it that way is like when you reflect on high school, it is very serious to you, like how it felt at the time. It might be ridiculous in reality, but it feels very serious and real to you at the time. So that's why he made a high school detective movie like that.
Oh, okay. That's a good way of looking at it.
Then Kurt's like smoking with a teenager with a teacher or something. Like this Bill Wolf.
Yeah, he's he's the cool teacher.
Yeah. And then Bill tells him he needs to at least go to college and just experience it. And he's like, he went to college for a semester and apparently left and came back and was able to be a teacher, which I guess.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. It's like, what kind of standards do they have? Then it was sort of like implied he was like the gym teacher or something.
Oh, okay.
Which, yeah, because there was some comment made about like, well, he's hanging out by the gym because there was some throwaway comment I remember. It's like, oh, I could maybe see that.
Well,
Not now, but maybe back then that
well,
would
he's
work.
also introduced like talking about the high school girls as being sexy ladies. It's like, ha, I didn't say that. And then there's this lady that comes up and talks to him, and like you see him go off in the background. It's like he totally got her pregnant. This isn't. There's nothing. There's nothing to say that's what happened, but it's like that's what happened here. He got a girl pregnant in high school, and so he needs to have a
Yep.
serious talk to her about it. Because both of
Yeah,
them,
well, I can't afford to take you to Sweden to get this taken care of.
yeah, we're a year away from Roe v. Wade, or is that 73? I think that's 74. No, it's 73. So yeah,
Yeah.
Roe v. Wade happens in 73. So, but this is taking place in 62. So yeah, I guess yeah.
That's a long way from that, and now we can look back at that and laugh, but then we realize, oh yeah, they're trying to turn the clock back here actually now too, but only in the shithole state. Keep that in mind.
Then we cut back to the strip. John is reluctantly dealing with Carol. They get pulled over. We're here. Carol like threatens to tell the cops that he raped her, which is not cool. But I guess she's young and stupid, so I guess that's her chip she can play. I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's always cops are always going to ask later, "Are you okay? Do you want to be with him?" Yeah. You're not being coerced in any way. That happened when Stacy got pulled over one night. He's asking her those questions, like, "What the fuck do you think's going on here?"
Then
Like she had a black eye or something. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool.
the cop like says like, "Oh, we got a good description of you doing something." He doesn't say what. I'm guessing just speeding or whatever, or causing some sort of public nuisance.
Yeah.
But
It was implied to be drag racing, but they didn't say it like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it was
Basically,
like
the
running strip or something.
well, he's like, yeah, with the information I got, I could put you away now, which is obviously a lie because he says like, I want to catch you in the act, which means like that's how he has to catch you because there's no other way to catch you.
See, that was before people had YouTube to tell them how to act the cops. I'm complying with you. I'm not rolling down my window. He didn't do that. But.
Well, the cop says something about the front end, and he says, "Oh, it's regulation. You can measure it." And then, like, he gets the ticket, and he just puts it in a glove box full of tickets. So it's like, okay, he just ignores this. Then we cut to Terry's trying to drag race Bob Falfa, this is Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford in a cowboy hat, and some lady that just disappears later on from the movie.
Yeah. Isn't this when Harrison Ford was giving up on acting?
Yeah, I mean, he was a carpenter in this movie, and he was like kind of, I don't know, because that's always the mythos on like Harrison Ford is that he was a carpenter, and then he just like happened into acting. And like I guess like yeah, here like, I guess Harrison Ford even had a family because in this movie he's about to turn 30 during the production of this movie, which seems like, oh wow, like Harrison Ford had kind of a late turn into acting then, because even I think Star Wars is like, oh, that's a young Harrison Ford, but really like he's just a man by that point.
Yeah, he's a grown man.
But yeah, he said like, yeah, you need to pay me more than what I make doing carpentry, and so they did. So it's like, all right, I'll do the movie. But I think like, yeah, for this and Star Wars, he was always like a combo. Like he got the job for Han Solo, like building the sets, and it's like, we need you to fill in while they're doing auditions for other Han Solo guys, and they're like, why don't we just use Harrison Ford? He's better at this than all the guys we brought in. So that's always the mythos behind it. Like I don't know what's true or not. So
well, I know in this movie he wouldn't cut his hair to go with the 50s, like square box haircut. So that's why he's wearing the cowboy hat.
Yeah. But yeah,
which works.
Yeah, adds character. Nobody else has a cowboy hat in this movie, so
no.
Bob just calls Terry a dork, and then like says like he's looking out for John. He wants to race him. Bob speeds away. Terry tries to pick up a lady from the streets, but then he does end up catching her attention, and she gets in the car, and he wants him to do a peel out. so he's he got a girl in his car, which I don't know. Presumably this is what people do. It's like nowadays it's like, no, don't even approach the car. But this, I
Yeah,
guess,
no, this was social media back then.
yeah.
The data highway was a highway. It was you drove up and down, you talked to, hey, it's like I can make my tire spin. You want to have a kid with me? Sure. That's how it all happened back then. That's why everyone was much happier.
Yeah, this is stuff when they talk about it was a more innocent time. Like, this makes me call bullshit on all that. It's like, no, this is a very predatory.
Yeah, no time was actually more innocent. It was just we didn't. More innocent means we didn't talk about the awful things that were going on. Because what you don't see a lot of in this movie is their parents, and there's a reason why. Because most of the parents back then were guys with just cut knuckles that liked to drink and didn't like it if you made too much noise. And that was your dad, and your mom was somebody who was just like, don't hit him too much, you know.
Yeah, you're out cruising the strip because you're avoiding dad beating you at home.
Yeah, because dad's drunk because it's Saturday and the football game's over and his team lost. So you know what that means? Lots of fear coming your way.
So like the minefield you have to walk through is getting home and being silent and hoping dad is passed out drunk and don't wake him up as you enter the house.
Yeah, you got to like become a ninja at some point. Now all the same stuff goes on. We just talk about it. Like there's not really been improvement. It's just we're just aware of it.
Well, I mean, it's also like, John was talking earlier about, the gas prices are going up, man. You used to like be able to run the circuit on one tank or on one fill up or something like that, or for $5 or whatever it would cost a nickel to fill up your tank then or whatever.
Oh, I used to talk to the old guys at work, and they said you just throw change in your ashtray, and you could fill your car up, like just with the change you had left from buying newspapers all week or something. And then all of a sudden, like, oh no, you need to carry cash with you to pay for. Like they said, when paying for gas went from coins to cash, that's when the darkness started in the world. I guess I don't know. Talking to these guys, I'm talking to these guys 25 years ago. So,
but I mean, if I drive my car regularly, it's like, okay, I'm filling up the tank like either once a week or once every 2 weeks, and it's like. Here,
you've never driven cars like this though. They get like 8 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, like these guys literally need to fill it up every day if they're going to be running the streets like this.
Yeah, and you're not often running your car at max RPM for like continuous periods.
Let's see. All right. Laurie and Steve. Oh yeah, we're back at the dance. Laurie and Steve get like a spotlight put on them. Like they're talking about like she was the head cheerleader and he was like the class president. So I guess they were expecting them to be here.
Yeah,
which is weird. it's like they're graduated. What are they still doing here? But I don't know, I guess.
It's like we got to move the narrative along. Got to give these people something to do.
So they put the spotlight on them, and so they have to pretend that like they aren't fighting with each other. And so they start a dance. I guess this is the one where that was supposed to be like, this is the snowball dance where it's supposed to like break off and be more. And so I guess everyone's weirded out by them. It's like, why aren't they breaking off?
Yeah, they're staring into each other's eyes. They're dancing their own dance. This is not part of the conformity of the 50s or the early 60s.
Yeah. Then we cut to Kurt's outside talking with an ex-girlfriend. He ends up like heading out with her. So, he's gone from the dance. Steve and Lauren are dancing with each other. Some teacher comes to like break them up because like they're too like close together, but apparently he didn't remember that they graduated last semester, so he just tells them off. He goes away. He's telling
to a showdown. This is like, I hate my job, boss, and I quit. This is that dream everyone has, and most of us like have too many bills to pay.
What is he telling him to go suck a duck? Which I'm guessing he's just basically telling him.
Kiss a duck, I thought.
Oh, kiss a duck. Okay.
Was it suck a duck? I could be wrong.
Well, that would be like just one letter away from telling him to do fellatio. So that would make more sense. But yeah, I guess kiss a duck would be more innocent, but along the same lines. So.
If you told someone to go fillet a moose, it might be more and less insulting. Huh? Like, I got to think about that. What are the dynamics of that? Then we'll just go all like Silicon Valley. So if you were going to fillet a moose, you'd have to like one of those mechanics creepers to like roll under it. Yeah, but no.
Then we cut to Terry is at the drive-in with Deb. Some guy leans in and picks up on Deb. Um, but like she kind of tells him to buzz off. Here he threatens Terry, who just has to stand down. But then like she gets him to leave, throws a match at him. And then Deb gives Terry the mission of like, let's go get booze, because I actually don't know if I don't know when the standards changed, but I remember remember you could get booze at 18 at some time in America, but I don't know. They
I
changed
think
it
that
to,
was in the Midwest, mainly Ohio.
oh, okay.
But that because I know that was a thing around here. Like if you had an Ohio driver's license at one time in Michigan, they'd give you booze if you were. But this thing predates me by decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the federal government basically made the 21-year-old drinking age mandatory by saying we won't give you freeway money. So it's like, oh, okay, we have to, because I think Ohio was the last state. And I also think if you got drafted and had a military ID, even if you were under 21, then they had to like, okay, yeah, you can drink. You're going to go to, fight in the Tet Offensive or something. So there you go. Have a beer.
And even though they ordered food at the drive-in, they leave without getting their food, which is kind of funny, I guess.
Yeah. It gives one of the waitresses a chance to act peeved. Did they not want it?
Then we cut to Kurt is cruising the strip with his ex. The other girl says the woman Kurt is looking for is like some businessman's wife, which again you don't know if this is true, but yeah, this is your internet back then. This is the rumor mill. This is how you get information.
Yeah, it's all makes sense.
They stop at a light, and then like his ex gets in the back, and they make out for a bit. I never got the ex's name, but I know it says like the lady who drives the VW Bug is Bobby. So Bobby asks Kurt to like say something to some guy she likes, and he embarrasses, and so he gets kicked out of the car, and so now he's on the streets again. Kurt sees the blonde's car and gives chase, but he misses her. Then we cut to John pulls up to Mel's diner to get Carol a Coke. And some guy walks up like wanting to want work done on his Dodge, which I'm guessing it's Dodge because he just says like I need work on my Mopar, and it's just about welding a fender. I don't know.
Yeah.
I forget what is
it's something that's going to be done with lead.
Yeah. I forget what does Mopar stand for.
I don't know. It's the Chevy or it's the Chrysler parts division.
Oh, okay.
I forget what it stands for. I should know that, but I don't.
Because I always almost exclusively associate Mopar with just the Hemi engines, because that was also the thing they only did, right? Or they mostly only did. Okay.
I always thought Mopar was like because all this hot rod stuff has its origins in bootlegging.
Yeah.
And I always thought that meant like more power.
Okay.
But I guess it's a combination of the words motor and parts.
Okay. So a lot more pedestrian than what you wanted to be.
Yeah, well, it's a bunch of engineers. Like,
but yeah, when a Southern says it, they're definitely saying more power.
Oh yeah, yeah.
More power.
Because like there is you'll see like what was the parlance around Ford. I mean, Ford's become like real super corporate now, but it used to be like there was just like Fomoco parts and what was their Motorcraft was their parts division, and then you had GM had Delco Ramey, and that became Delphi, and that doesn't exist anymore. But that was everyone had like their manufacturers and their parts division.
Okay.
But then, people used to always say like FOMOCO, which is just short for Ford Motor Company. It was like, why are we making that acronym? Just say Ford. But okay,
it's Ford's Japanese division, FOMOCO.
Yeah. Well, I always wanted there was some like really super specific like Ford stuff where you could get patches and badges from the company like that. My favorite was like Ford Northumbria. It's like that's like northern England, but it's a very specific part of it. But they had their own like and it was the cars from like the 60s and 70s, those weird little cars that they made over in Europe. It was like the what were they called? Like the Ford Zephyr or something. It's just odd cars they had over there, but they had like their own like division name and like heraldry looking symbols like they did in England. It's like, huh, that's weird. Sounds exciting and interesting. And of course, you had Ford of Australia. They had their own things, but yeah, Mopar just means motor parts, I guess.
So that this guy knows who John is, so John has to like cover like why are you with this girl, and then so he covers it saying like Carol's his cousin, which pisses Carol off, and she walks away. Cause she for some reason she just wants to be like thought of as his girlfriend or something, because like then that'll make her feel happy for some reason.
Yeah, she wants
to be an adult
girlfriend.
So,
yeah.
Which I thought that was going to be a reveal who her father was. I thought like the father was going to be like some cop, but like the cops are such an ancillary character in this movie, and like nobody even gets a name, that they're just not even a problem, really.
The cops in this movie are just squares, man.
So Carol runs off. John goes and picks her back up. He feels responsible for her. We cut to Terry's trying to get adults to get liquor for him. It doesn't go well. Eventually, he gets a guy to get him the booze, but like he robs the place, and so the owner pops out and takes some shots at the guy. So it's pretty like out of nowhere, funny and exciting.
Yeah, you don't expect that. Gunfire in this movie.
Then we cut to John takes Carol to the junkyard and kind of gives her a history on like drag racing in the area, and how it's like one of the wrecks end up being like in a video for like driver's ed and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, those driver's ed movies they used to show people like don't race a train, and they'd show you like a picture of a car that looks like a meat can or meat bomb went off in it. It's like, ugh.
I've never seen any of those, but I've heard tale of them or like
Oh yeah, I've seen I've actually seen real crashes like that, but that was another sideline I had during my life. But yeah, that's yeah, they used to have those like shock videos.
Yeah.
They were essentially like, oh, this is the first snuff film you see when you're a 16-year-old. I didn't conventionally get my driver's license like the other kids. Like I didn't do driver's ed or anything, because it's like dad just taught me how to drive a car, and it's like, well, this is what you do. And it was pretty straightforward. So, but yeah, I heard that a lot of people saw those. I didn't ask I paid for my son to do driver's ed. I didn't, I never found out if he saw any of that. But I mean, now that wouldn't be shocking to kids now. Because if you want to see something horrible, you just get on your phone. You can go to True Death or whatever weird websites they have for that stuff.
Then we cut to Kurtz. He's like staying outside a storefront for like a as TVs in the storefront. It was a thing till like, I don't know, the 2000s.
Yeah, I think it still goes on sometimes.
I don't know. Now you just have like, if you want to see what's up, you just like look on your phone. But here it's like, characters always acquire information from the TV set inside of like a storefront window. It was like, I mean, even like It's a Wonderful Life, that happens there too. It's like it was a trope for like 50 years. Like this is how characters get information.
Yeah, it works because it's easy to shoot that.
Yeah,
just shoot it on a sidewalk out, as opposed to like somebody sitting in their car listening to something. That's another thing in this movie, like that totally like doesn't exist anymore. Is you just turn on the radio and listen to whatever's playing.
Yeah.
Like, nobody does that anymore.
Well, I mean, really, everyone's here is tuned into Wolfman Jack. It's like what everybody cool listens to, I guess. So.
Yeah. But it's a group experience where you don't control it. Now everyone has a playlist.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be like me and listen to a podcast about like, oh, there's 50 episodes about this like obscure thing in history that I'm interested in, that this other guy does. And it's like, yeah, nobody just, or if I'm putting in a playlist in my phone, like I don't use my radio in my car.
Yeah. I mean, like satellite radio used to have like some crazy stuff that was interesting, where you could basically get Wolfman Jack because they'd have such a specific radio station where it's like, oh, we're gonna get music from the 50s, music from the 60s.
I still like satellite radio. I'm currently not in it anymore because it just, you get in at a good price when you buy the car new, and then it's like, oh, we want to up the price on you. It's like, oh, goodbye. So it's like, okay. I do like my satellite radio. I will listen to because and I just pay for the music package now. I don't even get the talk anymore because I have podcasts for that.
Yeah.
Because after Opie and Anthony left satellite radio, there was really no reason to like pay extra to listen to the talk stuff. But I do like the music because they have like really specific, crazy, like techno music of the '80s channel. It's like cool.
I remember they had a comedy channel where it's like that's where I'd find a bunch of comedians, but then I got away. But then it started to repeat itself so much, I got bored with it. It's like,
yeah, that was I remember XM Raw Dog Comedy, like that was pretty good. But then if you listen to it for more than 3 days or 12 hours, it just starts repeating.
yeah,
It's like they didn't really program that out more than a week or a month at a time. So
and then whenever like I think it's Father Guido would show up, it's like I have time to tune out.
yeah, this deep '70s stuff. Father Guido Sarducci here.
Yeah, which is fine the first time, but he's like it's so bland. I was like they had like that butted up next to like Doug Stanhope, and it's like, oh, which one do you think I want to listen to?
Yeah, this isn't even the same experience. I just heard about Rush Limbaugh in a hot tub having Barbara Bush crap on him so he could, feel something. It's like that's hard to switch into like that '70s, deadpan humor. It's like, oh, okay. I want to go back to the Stanhope. I want more Barbara Bush in a hot tub doing some kind of weird poop thing.
Well, that was Bill. Oh, what is it?
It's Bill Hicks.
Bill Hicks, yeah.
Yeah, you said Doug Stanhope. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I wasn't.
I mean, they're of a similar like, so yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug Stanhope was probably more appreciated in his time, whereas Bill Hicks was like, everyone's like, everyone stole from him and they didn't give him any credit, and then he died of cancer.
We know Bill Hicks and Alex Jones are the same person, right?
No.
That's just what. Yeah, Bill Hicks faked his death and became Alex Jones because that's really where his heart was. Alex Jones has actually addressed this before. He's like, yeah, I'm not Bill Hicks. You look like him and sound like him. You kind of say the same stuff, only he did it for a joke, and you're deadly serious.
But anyways, we show Kurt watching TV through a storefront window, and he's sitting on someone's car, and then some gang, the Pharaohs, show up to intimidate him. They want like some sort of restitution for maybe putting a scratch on his car. Although you wouldn't like anybody sitting on your car, but he's not even sitting on their car. They're saying he's sitting on one of their friends' car, which you don't know if that's true or not. So.
Yeah, this seems like a shakedown by a bunch of like people that want to be tough.
Yeah. So yeah, they take him in their car, which they have a pretty cool car. I guess they say it's a lowrider. I'm not sure what kind of car it is, but it's a pretty cool car. Kurt spots the blonde, but he can't do anything about it because now he's being taken hostage by the Pharaohs.
They're driving a Nomad.
Okay.
It's basically a '57 Chevy.
Okay. We have some interstitial stuff with Wolfman Jack, like him doing like prank stuff, and then like the mythos of him, where like he broadcasts from a plane, or but it's all kind of like building up that he's like doing this illegally, and so
yeah.
So listening to Wolfman Jack, it's like, yeah, you're breaking the law somehow.
You are the resistance in the 1960s.
Yeah, and there's some mystery about like where he broadcasts from, like either a plane or from Mexico. Although in this movie, it's like in town, apparently.
Yeah.
Then we cut to John and Carol get water balloon, but really it's all Carol takes the whole water balloon to the face, which she's kind of happy about it because then they prank him back by jumping out of the car. She sprays shaving cream all over their windows, and then John lets all the air out of their tires. So, a prank. They've just completely debilitated their car and left. So.
I guess the guys that own the cars were not too happy about that. Because they only paid these guys $25 a day to have these cars in the movie.
Oh, I thought.
And they let them eat off the food service thing as much as they wanted. And that was another problem with the making of this movie. They kept people on set like all day because they were filming so rapidly.
Yeah.
So they just brought the party to the set. And I guess like Paul Lamont and Harrison Ford were like terrible about like we're just getting wasted. And remember, the shooting schedule was all night.
Yeah.
You just start drinking at 6 a.m. And if they're keeping you on set the whole time, it's like, well, yeah, we're just getting hammered on the set, and then it's time to go like drive a car in this scene. Because a lot of the filming of the cars in this movie was like the guys didn't want camera rigs bolted onto the cars.
Yeah.
So they had to do like, oh, we're making a shoot car that follows the car and that someone's actually driving it or it's being towed along. And yeah, most of those people are hammered. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, they also shot this all in sequence. So even though they shot at night every time, it's like, the second consecutive week of shooting at night will just make you extra tired. So that would be character appropriate as you get towards the end of the movie and everyone's extra tired. So
yeah, and hungover all the time.
Yeah.
And setting fire to George Lucas's hotel and other things that supposedly went on. Yeah, but I guess like Harrison Ford and Paul Lamont were just like, well, we're just getting hammered. It's like, just bring me a bottle of Jack Daniels. Oh, you can't leave the set. We might have to shoot this again. This movie had one of the highest number of first takes. Okay, we're done. But like I said, the shooting, it wasn't because it was low quality. It's just the schedule they had was nightmarish.
Yeah.
And they also had to change their filming location at the last minute because the city they were filming in said no at the last minute. It's like, this is too disruptive. We can't have this.
Let me cut to Terry and Deb park somewhere to drink. Terry's like going deeper into a series of lies to try to impress Deb. They like awkwardly make out, and then they leave the car to go somewhere more private. Then we cut to the Pharaohs are like, and Kurt show up at a miniature golf to steal money from the arcade for gas or whatever.
Yeah.
Which
they're basically going to take a pry bar to get quarters out of this machine so they could fill up their giant engine in their car.
Which Kurt, like, he doesn't want to go along with this, but he ends up, like, the owner knows him, so he kind of, like, distracts them in the front while the guys steal everything. And they're like, hey, we're done. And they're like, done with what? Enjoying our time.
Yeah, it was a weird, like, euphemism. The best description of crime I've ever heard. I mean, the best is this thing of ours, but the other thing what this guy said is, like, was it, like, fulfilling or no? I forget what he said. Damn it. It was funny. It was a funny way to describe crime.
Yeah. And then we cut back to Terry notices that the radio isn't playing from the car, and so now they could run back and realize the car's been stolen. So it's a bad time for Terry. It's never a good time for Terry, really. So.
Doesn't she start like spewing her guts out here pretty soon too? From the booze?
It's a bit later.
Oh, is it? Okay, I thought it was like right after. It's like, oh, my car's stolen, and I have to puke everywhere.
Then we cut to Lori and Steve are sitting in their car together, or her car, I guess. And Lori wants Steve to go to junior college, and Steve says what he wants isn't in this town. Steve tries to convince Lori to have sex with him.
So what he does want is in this town.
It's like, yeah, it's really manipulative. He's like, you want to give me something to remember you by, right? And then so she just goes stiff, and then she's like, well, now you're not doing anything. You're like, like you're acting like a corpse. And it's just like, she's like, well, go ahead. Like, that's all you care about it. So
yeah, just make me into a fleshlight. You want to give me something to remember you by, like a illegitimate child that I'm going to have to raise?
So, I mean, at least he doesn't, I guess, like essentially rape her in this scene. But
yeah, he kind of backs off. He's like, whoa, hey, we're not doing that.
Then he says something, I can't remember what he tells. It says something about like her spying on her brother and something with sex, and so he says that to her, and that pisses her off, and he gets kicked out of the car. Then we cut to Terry and Deb are walking along. She's like telling like this kind of like horror story of people getting killed. It's like the goat killer, where like he kills goats and then kills peoples or something like that. Then they like start.
I was getting Koopa Chabra vibes from that. Just like, what's this based on?
And then they start hearing goat sounds, and so then Terry gets really scared. He like tries to run away. He's like, "You stay here, I'll go run for help."
Yeah.
Then Deb grabs him, and like they run closer to the goat noises. Then Deb walks off, and then Steve shows up, and he's like, "Hey, where's the car at?" And so Terry has to tell more lies to like So he won't actually tell him that the car got stolen. He's like, oh, a different car got stolen. Yeah, we gotta go talk to the cops and turn that in. Then we cut back to John and Carol are riding around. They're getting tailed by Bob. Bob pulls along to insult. They like insult each other's cars.
Yeah.
They drag race at a green light, but then Bob races through the next red light while John stops. So that's so that John says like, oh yeah, he's fast, but he's reckless and stupid. So,
which is about the only character building we get for that guy in the whole movie. He's like, oh, he's fast but reckless.
And then we cut to Kurt gets like info that the blonde and the T-Bird's like a sex worker. So he's like, no way. And then here they're like, oh man, yeah, she cost $30. It's like, oh,
30 American dollars.
She's a high price call girl.
It's like wiping your ass with silk.
The Pharaohs pull up to a parking lot, and so Kurt gets tasked with like hooking up a wire to a cop car axle. It's built up as a tense scene as he like sneaks around and like he like trips over something, so the cops stroll out for a moment and get back in. And so yeah, he hooks up the car, and then they like drive around. Like I forgot, don't even know what Kurt yells something at the cops, and then they start driving away, and then like yanks the whole axle off the back of the car.
Yeah, basically does like debilitating injury to that cop. Right? You can tell it's a dummy in the car because the cop pulls out so violently it like rips the axle off, but the car jumps like 5 feet in the air. You can clearly tell like that's not a person sitting in that car because they'd be handicapped from that. But it's a prank, you know, all in good fun. You just destroyed a police car, like all in good fun. Saturday night in Modesto.
John takes Carol out to like, I don't know, it's like in the middle of nowhere. This is like where like everything gets really dark. Like, you know, they're like filming in the woods or something like that. And there's no lighting in the background or anything like that. It's basically just becomes blue and black. Like,
yeah, it's just people talking in the dark. It's really weird. I wonder, is this an aesthetic choice they made, or is this like, well, this is the film we got?
Yeah,
so
probably.
It's got to shoot. We got to go with this.
So yeah, he takes Carol to like the middle of nowhere, like pretends to like, no, I need to have sex with you, and then like this is all a ruse so he can get her like address so he can just drop her off at home. So, and of course it works, but yeah.
You always like the I want to get laid gambit, but really I just want to get the address so I can dump you. It's a really elaborate way. But he is taking people's feelings into consideration, which is one of the only times in the movie anyone does this. So
yeah,
it is unique. It says something about him.
Let's see. Then we cut to Steve like sits down at the diner, and then like he gets picked up on by the waitress. It's like, hey, you're alone. Do you want to go back to my house? It's like, oh, this must be a great time to live.
Everyone's doing it. It's like, want to go make it at my place, honey?
Laurie sees us through the window and like walks off and gets mad, but Steve actually rebuffs the waitress advances, and so,
which would never happen in real life.
Then we cut to the Pharaohs drop Kurt off of the diner after having fulfilled his duties to them or whatever.
Yeah.
And they kind of invite him into the gang, and he's like, kind of, I guess, sort of seriously considering it. It's like, can I be a gang member for the rest of my life?
Yeah. Is there any future in being in a greaser gang? It's
No.
like the guys at the 1900s. Like, should I go to the wheelwright school for making wagon wheels, or are these horseless carriages going to be the thing of the future?
Kurt sits in his car and like just contemplates everything. He sees the T-Bird and tries to give chase, but his car won't start. Then we cut to Laurie comes across Bob on the strip and then just hops in the car with him. This is where the girl that's with Bob just disappears, so so she can hop in. Making it seem like this is just a thing you do. It's like, I'm a man with a car, you're a lady, open the door.
Yeah. Get in. You know what the contract is. Ass, gas, or grass. Nobody rides for free, or some nonsense like that. I don't know if grass.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much grass would be going. Well, I guess California. Maybe they got it early.
Yeah, California. Yeah, it's like. because one of the people in the production of the movie got arrested for growing marijuana while the movie was in production. So,
Um, she hops in the car and she says, "Don't say anything, and we'll get along just fine." So it's here. She doesn't want to do anything with him. She just wants to make Steve jealous and hope they see each other. So,
yeah.
uh,
Of course, this guy will go along with it like pretty lady close.
I could drive her to a secluded place where no one will hear
Yeah.
her screams.
Yeah, you think you got the upper hand here? Wait till you see how much upper body strength I have.
John and Carol end at Carol's house. She says she wants something to remember and buy. With this is basically like very reminiscent of the Lori and Steve scene. So here he gives her her gear shift knob, which she was playing with before, and then like kind of pecks her on the neck. It's like, there you go. So this is like a very innocent way to send her off when really very terrible things could have happened to her.
Yeah, it's like she's essentially saying why I kind of want to get railed. It's like, well, here's the gear shift knob because I'm not a complete psychopath. To take this knob and think of me for whatever alliterations that means.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting character like development for this character, where it's like, he's a greaser who's kind of like wanted by the law, and by the end of it, he's like kind of the most stand up guy of the whole crew. So.
Yeah, he's not a monster completely.
He's just not college bound, but really he should be like tech school bound. I mean, they have a junior college there. He should really be having a fine job. I mean, he's like not.
Well,
doing...
if a guy can build a car like that,
yeah.
It's like, oh, in that time period, it's like you're set for life. Like you literally, like, that's a time. I'm trying to think of what cars they would have back then. But like, if you're a good mechanic, like most people's cars fell apart at 50,000 miles. Like, I mean, that guy should obviously like, he's just not going nowhere based on what he has. But it's kind of in the movie, it's like, no, this is the going nowhere.
I mean, I guess in the follow up, like they show him becoming like a drag strip racer. It's like, okay, he did follow a
It made sense. Yeah, I mean that's why this movie works for people of that generation and that who like those kind of things. It's like, oh yeah, this actually follows an arc of people I know from that time who like built great cars and got into drag racing. It's like this all actually happened. I know people like this. I mean, they're all dead now. That's because they just got old. But yeah.
Then we cut to Terry is throwing up from the booze. All the people.
Oh, now she's sick. Okay.
No, not her. Terry's the nerd.
Oh, that's right.
He's called like Terry the Toad something. I don't know if I just call him Terry.
Because he was the tiger, and then everyone called him the toad, and
Yeah, because she doesn't know who he is, so he tries to reinvent himself as like, they call me the tiger.
Do they?
Yeah, there's all a bunch of old people that aren't impressed with him. Is like, he doesn't drink booze, does he? He's like, no, he says he does. It's like, yeah, he says he does. There's also an interesting character here. There's like a guy in this. He looks like a greaser's Clark Kent. He's got like glasses and kind of square job. So that's Del Close. Del Close is like the father of all improv comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like he ended up, he's like big Chicago guy, I think he founded Second City or everything. I can't remember. He's like basically everything that's involved with like SNL, the Groundlings, Second City, all that stuff all starts with Del Close here.
Huh. Okay, I'm looking at a picture of him, an older picture of him. I recognize him. I don't recognize him in this movie.
I'll just put Del Close American Graffiti and they'll kind of pop. He's in it for like a second. I'm not even sure he has a line.
He's like in a bar or something, isn't he? Isn't he that guy?
Maybe. I don't know. Like when I put it as like, I thought it was from this scene. I think he's listed as like guy at bar or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's just another kind of interesting person to be in here for. Yeah, because I don't know how, like, I don't know of Del Close doing any like famous roles and famous actor roles. I like all I know him for is him being a teacher of all like the greatest comedians,
Oh, well, let's see who we got on the list. Dan Aykroyd, John Favreau, Chris Farley, Bill Murray, Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, Vince Vaughn. Huh, okay. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, he's throwing up the yeah.
Stephen Colbert, I'm sure someone's heard of him.
Yeah, after Terry gets done throwing up, he spots the stolen car. He tries to steal it back. He tells, I don't know, this is the weird thing, is like, he's like set out to be a dork, but there's always like the caveat of being a dork. He's like, oh, you're smart, so there's at least that you look weird. You're what do you call that? Your social skills suck, but you're good at things. Where it's like for the entire movie, he's like he's never good at anything.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't even have that. He's one of those dorks where it's like, bad personality, glasses, ugly, and is useless. Just the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, there's no like hidden talent here. Like, oh, I'm really good at juggling or something. It's like, nope.
But this is where like he almost has something, because he's like, Debbie, go get a foot of wire and we can hot wire the car. So that makes it seems like, oh, he knows car stuff, or maybe everybody knows how to hot wire a car. I don't know, because he's messing around with stuff. He's like, yeah, he got the radio turned on. But so while he's doing that, he's trying to hot wire the car to steal it back. Then the thieves come up and they start beating him up. Where is it? Oh yeah, they beat up Terry, and then John shows up because he's driving by after he like got filled up at some. Yeah, he's like he gets filled up. I think he does. He pulls out of a garage, so he might have like adjusted something to his car because he knows he's gonna go racing. And then he fills up the car at some gas station, which they seem to be closed. But then there's also like there seems to be two workers there, and then one of the workers like throwing rocks at some guy that's like running back and forth into the lights and into the darkness. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, that was one of those weird, like almost David Lynch scenes in this movie where it's like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And I know they don't explain it because I've seen this before, but this is what alcoholics do when the store closes. Run into the light, John. I'll throw rocks at you. It's a metaphor for Christ.
John sees that Terry's getting beat up, and so he pulls in and beats up the thieves, which Deborah's impressed with, but then she still still hangs on to Terry. So it's like, I guess Deborah's pretty loyal here, I guess, even though she has no reason to be loyal to this habitual liar.
Yeah, she's what do they call them now? Ride or die bitches. She's one of those.
Then we cut to Judy and Karen come to tell. These aren't character people but I wrote it down because everybody goes Judy, Karen, so it's like, okay, I know their names.
Yep.
They tell Steve that Lori's with Bob, and so that pisses him off. We cut to Terry pulls up at the diner. Steve takes his car back because now he's gonna go be on the lookout for Lori on the strip. Then here Terry reveals that like the car isn't his, and like basically everything's been a lie. And then Deb just kind of walks away and tries to get a ride with somebody else, and then she ends up coming back, and then she says she had a good time with Terry, and so she tells him to call him sometime, and so she kisses him and then leaves. So I guess that's the best that can happen for Terry. So
yeah.
So have that being the end of Act 2. We have Act 3. Kurt pulls up to a radio station. He walks in and meets Wolfman Jack in silhouette, so they're building up their little mystery here. And then he comes into the recording booth, and there's a disc jockey that says, "Nah, he's not Wolfman Jack," and then demonstrates that Wolfman Jack's like a recording that he puts into the tape player. It's like, oh, okay. And so Kurt wants to get a note to Wolfman Jack and hope that he'll broadcast it on the radio, so because he's trying to find the blonde and the T-Bird. The disc jockey says he'll try to help him out. There's also a weird thing here where he's like, the freezer went out. Man, we got to get rid of these popsicles. You want a popsicle? He's like, no, I don't want a popsicle.
Yeah, it's like 400 popsicles. He shakes his hand and it's all like sticky. Like, yeah, these things are sticky as hell, man. It's,
yeah, I don't know like how they're making popsicles back then, but it looked terrible.
Yeah, it looked like ice cream and popsicle mixed or something.
I mean, basically to me it looked like it was supposed to be like a banana flavored popsicle that was mostly translucent and white, where it's like, well, now that day they just probably shove it full of food coloring so it looked more delicious than it actually is.
Yeah, this looked like wax, and it's probably actually what it was. It was just a prop.
Yeah.
Like, that's the grossest looking popsicle ever, but it's like, well, it gives the essence of being melted.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah, I
guess
like how like the disc jockey here is like the Oracle of Delphi in this movie.
yeah.
It's like if he can get a message to the prostitute, and or maybe we don't know what she is because we're just making up fictions around
Yeah.
who the girl in the White Thunderbird is. By the way, I guess the guy who owned the White Thunderbird, real bastard to deal with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his car was special. You know, you didn't eat near it. You didn't. And of course, the way she was driving it was objectionable to him. But this is all like while the movie's being made. I'm sure after the fact, like this guy went out of his way to let you know, like, oh, my car was in this movie and that movie.
But yeah, the disc jockey says he'll help him. He'll try to help him out. And as Kurt leaves, he sees the disc jockey is in fact Wolfman Jack. Well, it's kind of switched because he's like he observes this while he's in silhouette, which I don't know what that means, but it's just kind of an interesting choice, I guess. It's like, oh,
it's the dualism of humanity. It's cognitive dissonance manifest in the disc jockey.
Yeah.
Because the guy has like a unique voice when he's in conversation with Kurt, but then as Kurt's walking out and you see him in silhouette, he's like, "Hey, it's the Wolf Man coming at you," you know. And he wasn't talking that way before, but you could tell he kind of was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's got definitely that raspy rattle to his voice, his normal voice, but then he puts on a character for the radio. So.
Yeah.
Bob pulls up to the diner to call out John. John tells him to head to Paradise Road. Here, like, the rumor gets around that there's a big drag race going down at Paradise Road.
Yeah. The culmination of the movie, the penultimate reason this movie exists.
Yeah, and you see just a giant parade of cars heading toward Paradise Road. Terry's now riding with John, so he gets out and uses a flashlight as like the flag. So as soon as the light turns on, it's time to go. John gets the lead, but then Bob like veers off in the ditch and rolls his car. John comes back around to the car on fire. Bob and Lori get out of the car. Steve ends up with a distraught Lori and promises not to leave her. Here, John like recalls the race as him losing it, and then like he only won it because he rolled off. But like, I only watched it the one time, but I'm pretty sure John was leading the race the entire time.
Yeah, I think John had a much faster car.
Yeah. And then it's dawn, and like everybody rides off except for Bob. He doesn't have. Well, I probably rode off with somebody, but essentially he's a stranger to town, so the stranger gave him a ride, maybe.
Yeah.
Then we have cuts to Kurt is like asleep in his car. Because like Wolfman Jack does put the notice out for like, hey, like call the Burger Town phone. This guy's looking for you.
Call this pay phone. This guy's looking for
you. So he like wakes up to the phone ringing. The lady does call him, but then he says like he's not going to be in town any longer. And so she hangs up without telling him her name. So it's like well, I guess that's a mystery we'll never figure out. Then we cut to the airport, and Kurt is heading off to college, and Steve apparently is not going. He's going to hold off going to college for like a year to stay with Lori. And then we pan over, and it's like Terry and John are there to see him off as well. So this is where it's kind of like, yeah, this is all a friend group because these are the people here to see him off. But again, it's weird that none of these people seem like they should be hanging out with it. Also, like his parents are there too. It's not, he hops on the plane.
The only time you see parents in this movie.
Yeah, pretty much. The plane takes off. Kurt sees the T-bird from the plane window, which is because it's like, it's ironic, I guess. And then
it's like driving parallel to the runway, and then he just kind of looks off into space, like, that dream didn't happen either.
And then we kind of like a shot of the plane in the sky, and then like we get titles show up. We have like a yearbook photo of John.
Oh yeah, this is when the movie like really takes a dark turn.
If we get titles, it says John Milner was killed by a drunk driver in December 1964, and then like below that, then we got Terry's yearbook photo. It says Terry Field was reported missing in action near Ann Lock in December of 1965, and then we have Steve Bollender as an insurance agent in Modesto, California, so he didn't escape Modesto, and then they have Kurt Henderson as a writer living in Canada. Which I
So we like, does that mean he's a draft dodger?
yes, I believe so.
Okay,
I remember
good for
that
him.
I've seen some of More American Graffiti, and I believe that's a plot point of it because basically everybody except for, well, actually no, he's not in the movie. He's like the one person that doesn't come back. Everybody comes back for More American Graffiti except for him. But draft dodging is a plot point in More American Graffiti. So yeah, so I presume that's what's going on there. He's just dodging the draft by moving to Canada.
Yeah.
But I always thought like this thing here, I always thought that was like started with Animal House. I didn't know. I'm not even sure it starts here. I'm not even sure it starts here, but like, okay, this is before that then. So, okay. I also kind
Is
of
this the second time Richard Dreyfuss ends up being a writer reflecting on his past?
yeah, because he's the narrator in
Stand By Me,
yeah,
right?
Stand By Me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what like they have like the one kid waving as he like fades into the distance. It's like he was drafted and killed in Vietnam or something like that.
Oh, same. So okay, yeah.
Or at least I can't remember if that's what he says. I remember that being a joke in the Clerks the cartoon, where they're like the episode ends and they do like this voiceover of what happened to Buddy, and they say, and even though it takes place in like 2005 or something like that, it says Skeeter was drafted and killed in Vietnam.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. He died in the Second Crayon War, which was in the 1990s in Vietnam. Not as a soldier, but as a tourist.
Yeah.
That'd be weird if you like went there as a tourist and you died, and your friends could be like, "Yeah, he died in Vietnam." It's like, isn't he a little young for the Vietnam War? It's like, no, he was a tourist. We just say he dies in Vietnam, and if nobody follows up, they're gonna assume he was in the Vietnam War, even though it's like statistically impossible.
Yes, I didn't rewatch More American Graffiti. I remember it being fine. I saw some reviews where it seemed like Siskel thought it was like too complicated, and Ebert thought it was a fine like because it is interesting how they do the movie because they do conclude with this. It's done in it's like four different stories that all occur on New Year's Eve of four different characters. So they do essentially have the death of John happen, but they show him like becoming like a hot rod racer, or or a drag racer, and then his fate is kind of comes upon him, and then Terry is like in Vietnam and like fakes his death and like runs off to Europe. Deborah like becomes like a country western singer. And I can't remember. And then like Lori and Steve, like Steve is just an insurance salesman. They have twins, and then she gets like caught up by the police, like in a like they think she's like around a war protest going on, and they pick her up even though they're not a part of the protest, and so that's just kind of her thing. And then like it all ends with them like singing All Lang Syne at the end of the movie. But I remember it like not being terrible for what really a sequel to American Graffiti is, but I know it's not remembered well, and it did poorly at the box office, so it's largely forgotten.
I actually didn't know there was a sequel until I was doing research on this movie, so that's how little I knew about it.
Yeah, I think I only really remember the one sequence. Like I think it's the Deborah sequence where they go to like one of the airplane graveyards in California. It's like that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was an extraordinarily successful movie. So
very successful.
So I guess it sort of makes sense why like they let him make Star Wars. It's like, well, hell, if you make the money you made on American Graffiti, go ahead. But even Star Wars was like, yeah, here's $10 million, and that was still nothing to them or whatever at the time. So
well, this got nominated for like what? 5 Academy Awards.
Yeah,
didn't win any.
No, didn't win one of them. But that's Lucas's whole career, getting nominated for lots of things and not winning. Well, I mean, eventually his movies won for technical awards, so it's kind of I know people thought like Star Wars should have won Best Picture the year it came out, and it's like, yeah, I know it was the funnest picture and
Yeah,
largely
let's look
changed
at
all
what
of
came
cinema.
out that year and let us reflect. I was like, yeah, it was cool, but come on.
Yeah, story wise, probably not a better movie than the other Oscar movies, but as a movie it's the most probably the most important movie that came out that year. It changed
Oh yeah,
pretty
I mean
much
it's
all of cinema.
yeah, I mean it definitely like well that's the thing I when I was looking up reviews and people's thoughts on this movie, it's interesting how people of the time reviewed this movie and people who were age appropriate for this movie reviewed it, and then all the people who think George Lucas like raped their childhood reviewed this movie, which was completely like I mean, as you can imagine, totally not objective in any way. Like just the people, the Star Wars, angry Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
It's like more shit from George Lucas. It's like you're not even evaluating it like fairly as its own thing, or realistically. You're just mad about like these are people that are still mad about the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Which, like in retrospect to what's come out in the last couple of years, is people are like, "Hey, you know, the Phantom Menace was a pristine work of art." Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, time really does change your perception. But yeah, all the young people, really young people that reviewed this movie that were just angry at George Lucas over Star Wars, those were interesting, fun reviews to read. And then the really young people that reviewed this that just don't understand this, never lived in any part of this culture. Like,
Yeah.
because I kind of grew up in the vestiges of this culture, like the last years of like hot rod culture, where you just like, yeah, you just worked on cars all weekend and worked during the week. Like, yeah, I kind of grew up in that, very limited, but it's like, yeah, when you read like people now that are in their 20s that watch this movie and they're like, this seems weird. It's like, well, it's a culture that existed. It doesn't exist anymore unless you're into like, I guess like the Fast and the Furious people could like relate to this somehow.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's still. I mean, in some ways, there's a bigger car culture than there ever has been, sort of like internationally. But like now, cars are becoming so hard to work on that it's like the cars they're working on now, like like we're all turning into Cuba. Like the only cars we could work on are like 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, because cars now, even the ones with gas engines in them, like the cars that because I always have leased cars, and it's like it's just a computer with wheels on it. It's not something you can really do anything with. I mean, it will keep you alive and it will get you to your destination as quickly as possible. And it has like great onboard features. Like it almost drives itself. Like it you just set the cruise control and it'll slow down if there's a car in front of you. It'll beep if you get out of your lane or whatever. So you don't really have to think as much driving it. But also like, well, if anything goes wrong, it's $1,000. It's like, oh, we doing an engine overhaul? It's like, no, you're replacing a sensor that we have to dismantle the entire car to get to. It's like, oh, that was not a good design.
Well, even the stuff that's like used to have like cheap parts and easy to work on, now it's impossible because now everyone's jumped into that. Because I watched a YouTube series basically built around like, we're gonna buy this Miata and fix it up, and for basically like they spent like $1,500 on Miata and like $7,000 on parts, and it was like an amazing car.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's like, oh man, that's like super cheap. I could do that, but like if you did that now, it would cost you like $45,000.
Yeah. Well, I remember guys like you had to build the engine.
Yeah.
You had to find an engine, dismantle it, go to a machine shop, and depending on how much horsepower you wanted to get out of it, you had to get a certain type of engine, put certain types of parts in it, and it still might break. And nowadays, you buy an engine from like General Motors as a crate thing.
Yeah.
And you put the engine in the car. And like, oh, you want to strap a supercharger on it? Well, you buy this grade of motor. Like I knew the guys that used to build the engines. And like would buy like, like kilns that you fire clay pots in and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you're into pottery at home, they'd buy stuff like that and turn it sideways so they could harden the steel and the push rods and stuff so it could tolerate like the horsepower. Like they knew in their minds, like, oh yeah, you put this in there for that amount of time, then you drop it in oil, and so it'll like tolerate the pressure of. Or you got crazy and you bought like marine duty engines, which meant they were like engines you put in boats that were like V8 engines, but they had like roller tip rockers and camshafts and stuff, so they could, because all the boats, like all the marine duty stuff, ran at like 6,000 RPM or whatever, like constantly.
Yeah.
Like when you throw out a boat up, it's not like a car where it has 7 different speeds in the transmission to go to. No, it's going right to 8 grand, and you're just cruising. And that engine's like, wah, you know. So you always put the roller tip rockers and cams in the engines because it would tolerate the high RPMs a lot better than the regular stuff. But then you're building a marine duty engine, which is like, well, it's twice the cost because it's twice the work. And yeah, but now guys that do hot rods, they just buy like the 6-liter NASCAR engine. It's like, oh, you want to put a supercharger on it? Well, you get it with the, with the reinforced, main shaft bearings, or I forget all the terms.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at this. My friends were. I was just kind of along for the ride. Like, this looks cool. We were doing superchargers and turbos because we didn't have money, but.
Well, I saw one build that I really wanted to do, and like it was just before it became physically or economically impossible to do it. Is these guys took a BMW E36, which usually German cars you want to stay away from because they're complicated and expensive. But I guess the E36 was like the most produced BMW ever, and it was like more like American design, so it's like the parts are relatively inexpensive and it's easy to work on.
Yeah.
Also, like the oil change was awesome because you didn't have to get underneath the car to change the oil. It was like it was right on top where the oil filter was.
That's nice.
But anyways, they took this, but like so they were building a drift car out of it, and so we need a manual, but the car they bought was an automatic, and they converted it to a manual. It's like, oh man, I could do that. I think I could do that.
Yeah.
I've never been successful with many car stuff, so I'm like, so that was like, yeah, that's a project I'd take on just to like prove it to myself. But then it became way too expensive because like when they were doing it, like the prices to do it was basically like it was like you're basically you're basically spending like $3 grand on the car and then $2 grand to like soup it up, to do the manual swap and some other things where it's like that seems reasonable, and I was like, oh no, then yeah, doing it now it's like it'd be 50 grand to do it now.
Yeah, I remember the guy. What's the most recent thing that people, because you can't do it anymore, but I know people were getting into Crown Victorias.
Yeah.
Not because of the engines that came with them, but because the engines you could put in them.
Yeah.
And especially because you could get all the police interceptor, like heavy duty suspensions and the taxi suspensions and stuff. So you could just put these massively heavy motors and transmissions in these because they're still rear wheel drive cars. And I know people that did that, but those have become like, you'd think because there were so many police cars and taxis that were Crown Vics that like parts would be plentiful, but no, not anymore. It's all kind of dried up. You can't really buy them anymore like that. And they're not cheap to work on like they used to be. But I know the engines they came with, like that was the joke, and like a minivan could outrun a Crown Vic police interceptor because it had more power, but that police interceptor would last like 500,000 miles before major service. That because the thing with those, unless they were the Canadian RCMP Crown Vics, they weren't like really as fast as what you thought they were. Now the Canadians went crazy with them. They're like, well, we're just putting superchargers sticking out of the hoods on these police cars because in Canada you have to cover like 500 miles or something. But yeah, that was kind of the last era of the big V8 hot rods of the guys I knew were doing Crown Vics.
And I don't even know what people are doing with electric cars. Just thinking about combustion engines, it's like you can find great and fabulous new ways to mess with air and fuel combinations to make the car go faster. I don't know what you do with an electric car other than just put a bigger battery in it.
No, it's more powerful, more energetic drive motors. You can do those. Like just real just like molybdenum, real heavyweight like magnets that can just produce more power, more instantaneously. I mean, electric cars are awesome because because like having power at every wheel hub is like, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
everything all wheel drive all the time. That's ultimate control over power. But the problem is where you're storing the energy it's the weak link in the chain.
Yeah.
It's like you go hot rod an electric car. It's like, well, time to plug it in for 12 hours. It's like our night of fun is over after 3 hours of running this thing at like insane. I mean, you can get into like, you have to be an electrical engineer.
Yeah, that's
like,
the like
into capacitors.
you see
and stuff
people
like
work on this and like they're electrical engineers and they still have trouble with it, and they're the only people that know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's like, this is the smartest guy I've ever heard on YouTube, and he's like, damn it, this isn't okay. We're starting to film again. $8,000 later, I think I figured out this problem. It's like, well, this is never happening for me.
I mean, a lot of it's them like having to fight like the software that's built into it because like they don't want anybody working on the cars. They want that money too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the real scam of electric cars, is like the technology locks you out of it.
yeah.
But for 99%, because that makes business sense for them, though, because for 99% of their customers, it's like, yeah, lock them out. They're not going to know or care. It's just these 1%er guys. It's like, I went to Stanford or I went to MIT and studied electrical engineering, and I want to make my Tesla fly through space and time. And these people are stomping on my freedom.
We're sending a probe into space containing the supercut of what is the imperfect collection that is the Verhoeven Effect. Nathan, what scene from American Graffiti are we shoving into space?
Oh, this is easy. The drag racing scene at the end.
Oh, okay.
That was the penultimate scene in the movie. Even though it was one of the least emotionally impactful, it's like, that was the whole point of this movie.
And you can find us at Letterboxd. We have a username VHE. So 1 out of 5 stars. What are we giving American Graffiti?
I'm gonna give it 4 for nostalgia. It's really a 3, but I'm gonna tack another star on here because a lot of guys I used to know and respect that are now dead were really into this movie.
So you're giving this for other people's nostalgia? It's like, I know somebody who would like this movie.
Yeah, for people that would like really enjoy this, I would have to say 4. For me, it's really a 3, but in honor of, to pour a little out on the ground for those that came before me, I'm going to give it a 4.
But you can find us at verhoeveneffect.com, where we have listener support there. You can sort us at a monthly site for 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. You can rate our podcast on whatever platform of your choice. You can rate us whatever you want, but the only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory. We watch both this and that show live and unedited. And we have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory until the end of the year.
Yeah.
And you can,
December is going to be the time for those Verhoeven Effect shirts, so get them in.
And yeah, currently Black Friday sale, so I think it's 20% off. And you can find us at Letterboxd, username VHE. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.